Gehirntumor ohne OP und Chemo besiegt. Heute reden wir darüber, wie Arielle durch eine Veränderung ihrer Lebensweise einen unglaublichen Weg der Genesung gegangen ist. This episode is again in English. Enjoy.
Your Bannister Meile, der Selbsthilfe-Podcast für dein Leben in Freiheit. Mit Clara, Lennart und Christian.
Yes, hello again. This time in English again. We are very happy and honored to have Arielle as a guest today on our show. Here's Lennart, Clara,
Hi Arielle,
and myself.
Hello.
And Arielle, can we just get the logistics out of the way? From whereabouts are you speaking to us today?
I'm speaking from the Isle of Wight in England.
Beautiful.
Which is that little island just in the middle of the English Channel, just below England.
Yes, and we will come to this later, but you own a very beautiful property there, hotel as we see. So we come to this later. However,
Yes.
For our listeners out there, Arielle and myself, we know each other since I would say 20 years, something, right?
At least.
At least, exactly. We did, I was a client of Arielle as well. I translated workshops for Arielle and other beautiful people, and we kept in contact. And so it's very, very great for me, especially today, to have you here. I think to start, let's just go right into it. And I think I will ask this question: what is a miracle for you?
Well, that's a good place to start because I have a reputation for teaching how to manifest miracles.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get off on the wrong foot, I use that phrase because I'm a follower of a book called A Course in Miracles.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a definition of a miracle as being a change of thought. So if you change your thinking, you can actually clear the way for miracles to happen. Anything good can happen.
Yes.
So a miracle is a change of thought, which leads to a change of feeling, and usually a lowered level of stress. So you are clearing the way, you are focusing on everything good instead of all the bad stuff that's going on in the back of your mind. So that's a very good question. Thank you.
Cool. That was a very good explanation. So, Arielle, we always do it like this, that for our listeners, that they get a bit of an idea, to whom we are speaking. So, anything, which you want to share, about your life, about your journey, because we're talking about the Bannister Meile, about something which you did or something, a challenge you had, which you could kind of maybe have a breakthrough through things which are supposedly impossible, maybe, or very big challenge. So anything you want to share, would be very appreciated.
I'd be delighted. My main career in life was working as a healer. I was a fully trained osteopath and naturopath, and consequently, I took really good care of myself and continue to. Beautiful diet, exercise, fresh air. I was doing everything right, and I had one problem that I got divorced in my early 30s, and I needed a new husband. I was very keen on having a family, and I looked. I'd moved to London, and I thought, many men, I will meet the man of my dreams. Within 2 years, I'll be married and having my perfect family, and babies will come naturally, and everything will be absolutely hunky-dory. Well, with each year that went by, my stress levels went up, and I got to the ripe age of 39, and the clock was ticking. And you know that over 39, the doctors start saying, it's going to get really difficult. And I still hadn't met the man of my dreams. And during a routine blood test, they suddenly discovered that my prolactin level, which is a hormone in the pituitary gland, was way too high. I mean, we're talking 22,000 milliwatts. I can't remember the exact amount, but it was way, way off the scales. And they said, that can only mean one thing. You've got a brain tumor. And I went, And furthermore, you're not fertile because this is telling your body you're already pregnant. Because this particular hormone is the one that makes your breast produce milk for the baby. Okay. So it's as if I wanted babies so badly, I was already producing the breast milk. How ironic, I thought. Anyway, it wasn't good news. And that's an understatement. I've learned the British art of understatement. It was not good news. And I decided, first off, that I didn't really want to treat it with medicine. And actually, that wasn't a difficult choice because they only had two things they could do at that point in time. They could operate on it, and they had one drug at that time. They had something called bromocriptine, which was quite a toxic drug that had lots of side effects. Mm-hmm. So being a naturopath and an osteopath and living this clean life, I didn't want to take a drug. So I looked into the operation, which was gruesome, and it was only 50% successful. Mm-hmm. So that meant 50% of the people who had the operation, it grew back. And I thought, ooh, that doesn't sound good at all. So I found a wonderful doctor who was willing to support me and oversee my journey. And he was very kind, and we made a deal that I would carry the prescription for the drug, and I could do whatever I want, but if my symptoms got worse, I would fill the prescription and take the drug. I said, done deal. Okay. And this carried on. And it took me 10 years to get to the point where the tumor cleared. During that time, I changed a lot because I had to work on all the stresses and the pressures that had led to what had created the tumor. And I became more and more convinced that what we think about, how we feel, and the pressures that are on us emotionally and in your thoughts are what actually causes ill health. I already had that idea because of my training. But now I had to practice what I preached, which was really an interesting place to be, because until I healed it, I wasn't sure it would work. And I couldn't tell people for sure it would work. Mm-hmm. But gradually, my prolactin levels came down, and with each visit to my doctor, he became more confident. He said, I don't know what you're doing, but it seems to be working, and you're stable. Mm-hmm. So after about 5 years, I had to go to see him in a different place because they would no longer cover it on my insurance policy. But that was okay. We continued, and I was very lucky to have the same doctor for 10 years. And I will still remember the day I came in for to see the results of my blood test. And he was scrabbling around on his desk looking for them. Where are they? Oh, yes, here they are. And then he looked at them and very puzzled. And he goes, this is weird. And he said, the results are really low. And I said, oh, is it because I'm now so old that my hormones are different? He said, no, that can't be. That wouldn't happen. He said, this can only mean one thing. Your tumor has gone. It is gone. And he was so sweet. He got up and hugged me. And he was really happy for me. So that was lovely. And I thought, well, chalk that up. I've done it. That's great. I can relax now. I can get back to my life. And my life had been coming back slowly. I'd never stopped work. I sometimes had to work through lots of pain and all the stress of going to see doctors and having MRI scans and stuff like that. But now I could really relax and my life could come back full on. I was still looking for my wonderful dream man. Hadn't quite found him. I'd had many relationships, but none of them were absolutely right. But the pressure was also off because now I was kind of too old to have babies. I didn't fancy having a baby by, artificial means. So I thought, okay, now I just want a really nice relationship. I can be pickier. I'm not so desperate. And what happened next was really weird. A few years later, I suddenly, again, under extreme stress over a relationship breakup, I suddenly developed breast lumps. And I went, whoa, this looks like the same thing has happened all over again. The stress has come in. I've been really, really upset. And suddenly I've got breast lumps. And first I just tried to chill out and calm down. And I started dealing with some of the stuff that was behind in my thoughts and calm my emotions down. But my friends and family got on my case and they said, you have to go to the doctor. So finally I went to the doctor and of course immediately they said, oh, we must operate. These look really aggressive. You must have an operation. These lumps must be removed. And I got the whole explanation about how they would do a biopsy and they wanted to do a mammogram and all these things. And I said, well, I'm happy for you to do a biopsy. because I want to know what's actually in there. I'm not having a mammogram because I think that's a bad idea, because I have a really sore, aggressive lumps, and to hit them with X-rays right now is not, I think, what they need to heal. So he grumbled, but he agreed. So we did an ultrasound instead. So they performed the ultrasound, and they found 3 or 4 really aggressive lumps, some in each breast. And then they performed the biopsy, and he gave me the lecture that, if it has so many cells, it's malignant. If it has less cells, it's semi-malignant. There are 5 grades of cancer in the breast. And finally, after a few weeks went by, I had been fasting the whole time to try to quiet my body down and cleanse my body. And it was about a month after my fast, I went back to get the results. And he was so disappointed to tell me that not one malignant cell had been found in the breast lumps. They were benign. And I said, oh, that's great news. Oh, but we should still take them out. We should still take them out. We must schedule the surgery, he said. And I said, well, by that time I had done some research, and I discovered that if the lumps were benign, they were called fibromas. And if you operated on fibromas, they more than likely grew back anyway. So I declined his invitation and did not have the operation, and continued to really fast and look after myself, continued to do the work, and 9 months later, they were gone. They just completely evaporated. And I thought, that's proof. The first time could have been a fluke, but the second time, I thought, that's not a fluke. I made that happen, and I did what I said works, and it worked. It does take time. It does take time. Body is slow to heal.
Wow. So
that is my story, and I wrote about it in my first book. But at that time, I didn't have the breast lumps, so I only wrote about the brain tumor. And it was interesting to have many opportunities in my life to practice what I preached.
Yes. But I mean, I think this is what I always found the power of your work. There are a lot of people who talk the talk, and there are few people who walk the talk. And I think also as a client, as someone with whom you work, it makes a huge difference, because you can receive. I mean, I can, as a client, receive a totally different energy. It's just authenticity and just pure power. I mean, this is wow. This is I never heard that your story in that detail, but so now
I hope it wasn't too much detail for you.
But I mean, still. But I mean, what? Just to sum up. So basically, you did not take any medication. You did not have any radiation therapy or any chemotherapy or anything. It was just pure over fasting, over
I had homeopathy.
Yes.
I tried acupuncture. It didn't seem to help me. I tried lots of weird things, like electrocrystotherapy. That didn't seem to do much. I was open to all kinds of alternatives that were not invasive, but I did not have any orthodox treatments or drugs. Lots of vitamins.
And so, did I understand this right? What you said, what worked was your thoughts, your clarity, and I think that's it really. Thoughts, clarity, and a clear direction, right?
Yes, and it's what reduces stress. I'm quite convinced that it's the particular stresses that we hold in our body, because our body stores memory. We don't store memory in our brain. We store it all over the body.
Yes.
And when you have particular stresses, they get stored in so-called appropriate tissues. So, for instance, in my problems, it's always been about female issues. So I always had the problems in female organs, which was quite appropriate. People who get a lot of arthritic joints, it's often they're holding anger about wanting to do something, and they feel penned up, so they get angry in their joints and inflamed in their joints. And different diseases have different mental, emotional components. This has been talked about for years. I think the first person who wrote books about it was Louise Hay.
Yes.
And she's very famous for it, but then many people have written wonderful books about it. I used to follow the work of a lady called Debbie Shapiro, who had an encyclopedia of every body part, every fluid, every tissue. and you could interpret from reading what those tissues were about. You could go backwards and then say, okay, I have these symptoms which have affected these cells and these tissues, and that means it must be this kind of stress. And that was brilliant for getting clues about where you needed to address the thought changes that needed to happen. So throughout all this, I was doing coaching work. That was my main source of living. So people were coming to see me with all kinds of problems, not just health problems. Because of my health background, I got a lot of people with health problems.
Mm-hmm.
And what I discovered was that often they were too far along the line to be able to reverse it because it took so much time. So often I had to just help them deal with taking interventions like surgery or taking drugs. And I realized I had to go further down the food chain. I had to catch people where the stresses began.
Yes.
So I started doing teaching work and doing coaching work for people with relationship problems, business problems, career problems, because that's where the problems start. And if you can nip those in the bud, then they don't have to get an illness later on. And the same principles work for whether you're trying to manifest a miracle in your career or in your relationship or making a baby or whatever it is that is causing you stress. The same principles kind of work. You have to look at what's blocking you and then get rid of those blocks. Clear them, do the therapy that's involved, go back and erase those bad code, bad programming that's been put in at some early age.
I mean, the thing is in the UK, I mean, I lived for quite some time in the UK as well. And I mean, I think you have a United States background, right?
That's right. I moved here when I was 23.
Yeah, exactly. I think in the States and in the UK, I think one is much further on this so-called alternative kind of, approaches. But here in Germany, especially, I mean, I'm since 2011 here in Germany, and it's I mean, I think that's also the impulse, but Leonard said, hey, let's do a podcast and let's do this and let's bring this out to show people different possibilities, because people are so heavily, hooked into school medicine, and that's only the one way, and you have to take these drugs, and that's the only way, and there's no other way. Of course, there are a lot of alternative people as well, but in my experiences, they are much more, kept under the lid.
Really? I'm surprised.
Yeah.
We're the land of homeopathy.
Yes, homeopathy is the interesting thing. There's something which, I don't know, for whatever reason, seems to be quite accepted. Yeah. But I mean, Clara just lost her little sister with a brain tumor like a year ago. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating how there was just also, I mean, we, because we know a lot of amazing people, like you, for example, and like other people, yeah. And we had a whole plan what she could do, and and we would have called and arranged and also paid for it and anything, yeah. But there was just absolutely no, also from her side, and I had a very strong feeling. She was so in this kind of ether body of this general belief system, yeah. And also the doctors, I mean, they were very nice, yeah. But I mean, there were so many possibilities she could have done, and she didn't do it. And it was the typical situation. After the first chemo and radiation, she got much better for a bit, and then boom, she was gone. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So exactly that thing. And there is, I experience much less awareness and openness here on the continent, especially in Germany, in comparison to the UK or the United States. Mm. Yeah.
It sounds like your sister must have had a different kind of tumor, probably in the brain tissue itself, which is much harder to contain. Mm. I still believe anything is reversible. I've met people all over the world who have reversed the most terrible diseases, but it is harder. I was lucky. Mine was contained inside the pituitary. So it was not considered normal for it to spread. It was very big. It was borderline between malignant and benign, so they couldn't decide. Because of its activity, they were worried that it was malignant and could have come out of the pituitary because it was getting so big. But it didn't. I was very lucky.
Yes.
But it's amazing how few people are willing to look inside at a time like that.
I have a question. First of all, I have to say I'm very touched by you. Your energy is very beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Meine Frage
I told you.
Ja, meine Frage ist, woher hattest du das Vertrauen in dem Moment, wo dir der Arzt sagt, dass du schwer erkrankt bist, dass du sagst, alles, was du mir sagst, mache ich aber trotzdem nicht, sondern ich verlasse mich auf meine Intuition und ich faste und ich löse das auf meine Art. Also woher kam dieses Urvertrauen in dir, obwohl du eigentlich ja so gestresst warst?
It's a very interesting question. Clara was asking, where did you find the trust to kind of, in a certain way, go against the kind of, medical approach? I mean, the school medical approach, yeah? Where did you find the source for this trust? Especially as you told us, you were very stressed at this time in your life. So there was also stressing the system, yeah? And she said, she asked, how did you actually have the strength and the trust to say, well, no, but I don't do this, I do that. I'm fasting, I am, meditating, I'm trying, alternative stuff and so on.
It's a very good question. I guess my whole family was imbued with natural attitudes towards health. I was raised by my mother, who was a health food freak. Before anybody knew about health foods, she was baking her own bread, and we had our own chickens and grew our own vegetables. And we were always given vitamins, even as a child. Mm-hmm. So she was a follower of, what was his name? Somebody on the radio at that time in the States, Carlton Fredericks, who used to give lectures about naturopathy and natural means. And both of my parents were very anti-medicine, for instance. This is very unpopular nowadays, but we weren't allowed to have any vaccinations. Mm-hmm. He was particularly against the polio vaccination. And it was very against the mainstream in America to be against vaccination at that time. This was the 50s. It's even worse now, I think. It's going to be made a law that all children have to have the vaccinations. And it's a quite controversial subject. Because when you actually look at the research, they don't have the research to prove what they're saying.
Exactly.
It's not a belief. And so I was raised with parents who had this other mindset. And then I was a very spiritual kid. And I had spiritual experiences when I was quite young, which gave me this feeling of a direct connection. So I felt I had angels. I felt I had guidance. And I felt that I was somehow strong inside. And I had a spiritual practice, and I've always done yoga. And, I did lots of things. I was a member of Subud, for instance, which was an international organization that had a spiritual belief of being able to connect with all that is God, whatever you want to call the energy of the life force. And because of this, I felt I had an inner strength. And I had years of training as an osteopath and a naturopath. And I was very convinced that there was another way. Whether it was popular or not didn't bother me because of my family background. Mm-hmm. So I was in a better place than most people who are raised to revere doctors and medicine as the be-all and end-all. Doctors are gods. I respect doctors. They are doing their best. And most doctors went into medicine because they wanted to heal. Mm-hmm. And I understand that. I wanted to heal too. I have a lot of compassion, and I really hate to see people suffer, whether they're suffering with pain, illness, or some problem. It touches me, and I want to help. So I understand that feeling, and I know that's where they came from, at least most of them, not all of them. And what happens to them in terms of their training in med school, and then afterwards when they get into practice, is sad, because a lot of them get quite disillusioned, and they don't get the time to really do healing. They're on a bandwagon trying. They have to produce some result. And so they give out the drugs, they do the surgery, they do what supposedly is establishment practice, even if they don't believe in it.
No, it's a crazy thing. Well, they're part in the system, and they have to, as you said, produce results, and the time is limited, and stuff like this. I mean, that's the whole story always. Yeah. Wow. So, we heard now a bit of your, the kind of your healing story and your professional story. But what I find so fascinating, I remember when was it 2 years ago or so? I got an email where you announced the Haven Hall.
Yes, we'll finally open.
Exactly. And I said, oh my God, Arielle is doing the next big project. So I don't know, I find it fascinating. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Sure, because it's a great example of manifesting too.
Yes.
After many, many years, my husband and I discovered each other, and we got married 4 years ago. And when we got together, we realized we needed a place to live. So we started looking around, and I used to live by the sea. And I said, I'd really like to live by the sea again. We were both in London. And so we started looking along the south coast of England. And I knew most of the south coast. And the only place I didn't know was a town called Chichester. So we were looking in this town, and it was very expensive. It was the same prices as London. We couldn't buy very much, but we found some very pretty houses to look at. Very manicured, all done, And I said to him, I can't imagine living here. This is so boring. I mean, what were we going to do here? And we were both sort of retired. We didn't really have much to do. I was still doing coaching work, but my training work had gone down. And then good old Rightmove, which is our online estate agent company, threw up a property on the Isle of Wight. And here we were standing in a house that was probably worth $3 million. And here was a mansion on the Isle of Wight. And I mean mansion. It was like 20 bedrooms. It had towers. It had 10 acres of land going down to the sea. It had beautiful gardens. It was 1.2 million.
Wow.
Half the price, less than half the price. And we said, wow, I think we better go see that. So we'd never thought about the Isle of Wight. So we got on the ferry and we went over to see this beautiful mansion, which isn't what we bought, by the way. And we looked at this place, and it was beautiful. And we fell in love with it. We liked the people who were selling it. But it was grade 1 listed building, crumbling Victorian mansion.
Oh, yeah.
It was less money. So we in the end, finally got sensible and didn't buy that. Rightmove threw us up some other properties on the island, and my husband dragged me over to this property we're in now. He said, we have to look at this place. We drove in the driveway, and we both went, wow, this is incredible. It was quite the opposite of the other property. Beautiful house, not so big, right on the sea, overlooking the sea with a 180-degree view on the top of the cliffs, beautiful garden, and it wasn't crumbling, we thought. It was 1908 instead of being Victorian, so it was a younger building. And we ended up buying this place. And then because it had been chopped up into little rooms in the 50s to make it into a hotel, we decided we wanted to turn it back into a house and remove all these partition walls. But it was a business. It was a hotel. And we didn't realize that by buying a business property instead of a residential property, we would be subject to a lot of EU rules. A lot of EU rules. So suddenly, the minute you touch a building, you become subject to all these regulations, and we had to put in 6 inches of insulation on the walls, double glazing on every window had to be replaced, every door, as well as all the work that we had to do inside. Well, we ended up gutting the place. Every wall was back to the brickwork.
Wow.
Every window was replaced, every door. We had to redo the roof. We had to relay the floors. It had to have sound insulation. It had to have all kinds of extra, complete rewiring, complete replumbing. You can imagine. It took 4 years of work. And luckily...
And a bit of money.
What?
And a bit of money, I say.
A bit of money.
Yes.
My husband had very, happily received some inheritance money from his father. And all of that went into the house and more. It was just endless. And because we'd both done property in our lives, I had done up lots of period properties all over the country just to live in flats. But I was used to putting back the beautiful cornices. I was used to doing things that looked period style. I was used to the ambiance that this house really called for, because it's a very charming house. It's very light and bright and friendly. And so I did the plans, and David did all the invisible work. He did the groundwork, all the plumbing and the pipes, and decided to put in CCTV cameras everywhere and lots of Wi-Fi throughout the building, so everything is going to be great. And we sort of thought at the beginning that it would be a great place to run a few trainings.
Yes.
So we had when we took apart all the partition walls, we were down to about 7 bedrooms, which isn't a very big training. And then we decided, that wasn't going to be big enough. So we bought the house next door and we joined them together. So we then got another 4 bedrooms. They're actually apartments. So we ended up with, in the end, we ended up with 14 bedrooms.
Wow.
So that's quite a big house again. And we built ourselves an extension to live in because we no longer wanted to live in the house. And we thought we would be running trainings here. But in fact, what we decided to turn it into was a B&B. So one problem led to another. And after 4 years, we created this beautiful property. And it's now being enjoyed by lots of people coming to visit. But what we've discovered works best after lots of experimenting is running it as a B&B. So we will do trainings, but they're not our bread and butter.
Yes, I understand. Yeah, fascinating. So how would you say, you talked about, manifesting it. I mean, what is it that you actually, that's also, I think, very interesting for the listeners here. What is it that you actually practically do? I mean, how can they...
Well, first you have to have a vision. You hold the vision of what you want, not what you don't want, which is, in the healing world, the most important first decision. Most people say, well, I want to be rid of my symptoms, or, I want to be rid of these builders. We had 55 builders on the site. We want to be rid of all the mess. You have to keep the vision of what you do want instead. You want to visualize, a healthy body, or you want to visualize the finished end product. And with every single room I designed, I had to visualize what it would look like and then keep going for it. Now, everything goes wrong in the process. Absolutely everything. You get setbacks in healing. You get setbacks in building work. You get setbacks in any career, in anything you set out. You have a vision, and then life throws you problems. And then you have to do whatever it takes. And that is the phrase that we use to really propel ourselves. You have to do whatever it takes. Every single day, you have to do whatever it takes. Now, you may or may not succeed every single day, but if you've done whatever it takes to the best of your ability, you've given it all you've got, then you can sleep at night, and the next day you deal with more problems.
Yes.
And you get through it like that. Doing whatever it takes is what people sometimes forget. Particularly on the healing path. So you have a vision of really good healing. But are you doing whatever it takes? Are you giving your body nutrition that it needs? Are you giving it the extra assistance it needs? Are you cleansing the body of all the stuff, the debris that's clogging up your body? If you're giving your body a fair shake, your body can heal almost anything. It's been proved. Mm-hmm. Every serious illness, every problem all over the world, someone somewhere has healed that disease.
Yes.
So if it's possible for one person, it's possible for anybody.
That's exactly the point. No, this is exactly what Mr. Bannister was proving. No? What I find so important now, so I want to repeat it again for our listeners. You said, ask for or visualize what you want, and don't visualize on what you don't want anymore.
Right.
So don't say, I want that all the builders are gone. But
right.
But visualize how is it when they're gone, how is the end result. And I think this is such a game changer, because most people say, I don't want this anymore, or I want more of that, or blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But so few people actually say, okay, I want that, or that's my vision of whatever it is.
Arielle, can you give us an example? For instance, we were talking earlier about partnership and relationships, and you mentioned it already. So let's say a listener is basically trying to manifest a relationship. How would you approach it, really practically?
Well, my husband and I met online. So what's interesting is that if you do online dating, that's hard work. And we both went through thousands and thousands of profiles online. If you've ever had the opportunity to do online dating, it's soul destroying, because you can look at all these faces and think, oh, no, 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 no. And you say, oh, this one's really interesting. And then what happens is very curious. If you watch the process, you get all excited. You think, oh, wow, this person looks amazing. I can't wait to meet this person. So you get all excited and you start communicating. Oh, wow, it's getting better and better. Finally, you get to meeting that person. And they're not what you expected. And then you go from very highest excitement to plummeting with despair. Now, that's just what happens with any problem. It's the same problem again. You have to manage your feelings. You have to manage yourself so that you are not being controlled by the patterns that first get you excited, the attachment to having that relationship. And you have to stay cool and calm and really resourceful. And again, with your vision. Now, what worked for us was we had a vision of what we wanted in a relationship. We really wanted compatibility. We reached an age where it wasn't just about making babies anymore. It wasn't just about who's the hottest, who's the most sexy guy, who's the most sexy gal in the world. We wanted somebody who is really compatible. And my husband did something very clever. On his profile, he put down all the books he reads. And they were all about the authors that I was reading.
Wow.
So, although I would not have chosen him, because he put all those books in there, I went, wow, he's been reading all those books. That's really interesting. He might be somebody worth talking to. And of course, when I met him, we had a lot to talk about. And that was the key to us really getting together. We had the same interests. We had the same passions. We were both spiritual people. We had the same values. And that's what actually helped us to create a really great relationship. Now, whether you meet online or whether you meet at a wedding or somewhere at work, if you found somebody who is compatible with the same values, the same interests, you're onto a good wicket, as we say in England. This is in your favor. You'll probably have more capacity to deal with the problems that inevitably arise in relationships.
Mm. But so basically, what he was with the books, what he was sending out to come back to Lena's question. I mean, he set a very clear frame somehow. He put out a very clear energy of something, right? To which you could then link. Mm-hmm. So it's again this kind of clarity, this kind of positive clarity of something.
Yes. I mean, two of the books that he listed, I remember, were Marianne Williamson and Byron Katie, both of whom were some of my favorite people in the world who have written fantastic, transformative work that has helped me tremendously in what I've done and supported my whole idea. Byron Katie, for instance, is a woman who has helped people transform their thinking instantaneously.
Yes.
By really cutting to the chase and saying, do you really believe that? Is that really true? And if people are honest enough to say, actually, that I'm exaggerating, that's not the truth. There is another side to this.
Yes.
And that's only her first question. So in 4 questions, she completely turns people around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, the first book you wrote, the Compassionate Coaching, was also, as we got to know, translated into German, so Coaching mit Herz und Verstand, heile dein Leben und erwarte Wunder, by Arielle Essex. And then, I don't know how many years ago, but was it like 5, 6, 7 years ago, you wrote The Practical Miracles?
I did. I wrote another book because I thought people complained about my first book that I didn't give them how to do it well enough.
Ah, okay.
So I thought, okay, I'm going to spell it out and I'm going to show them the steps that I went through in terms of dealing with the thoughts in my head. And in my second book, Practical Miracles, I talk about thought clouds, negative thought clouds, which is how I started to think about them. And each thought cloud that is stored in your head or in your body somewhere incorporates old ideas, old beliefs, emotions, and often it has an age. So you can actually know, that started when I was 6 years old.
Yes.
It came from a trauma. And I believed from that day on a certain way that I didn't believe before.
Which
We
influences your entire life then, right?
Yeah, it becomes this pattern of how you behave, but they're not necessarily who you are.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily true. There's other ways of thinking.
Yes.
Ich weiß nicht, ob es möglich ist, dass du das kurz zusammenfasst. Du hast schließlich ein ganzes Buch darüber geschrieben. Aber gibt es irgendwas, was du den Zuhörern mitgeben kannst, wie sie diese negativen, ich weiß nicht mehr genau, wie du es genannt hast, negativen Gedankenblasen mit einem Quick-Fix irgendwie lösen können? Oder was zumindest der erste Ansatz ist, da dran zu gehen?
Clara was wondering if it's possible for you to, in a short, in a few words, to sum up the kind of, your second book, which you said is very practical. So is there something, in inverted commas, a kind of quick fix or an entrance, what you could tell our listeners now, on that level, where the practical miracle book is working, what they could do on a very practical level. So like, let's say an exercise or some kind of mindset or something like that.
Ooh, I don't know about quick fix.
Yes.
And in fact, I'm glad you said that, because my way is not the quick way. Mm-hmm. If only there was a quick way to just go like that and you would just heal instantly. Wouldn't everybody like to know that?
Yes.
It doesn't have to take a long, long, long time, but it depends how well you apply yourself. And I actually recommend people have a coach to help them through it, because it will help them to stay focused. Mm-hmm. And to really look deeply around the issues that they're blind about. In my second book, Practical Miracles, I talk about, first of all, look at your symptoms. Let your symptoms of your problem, whether it's a health problem or a relationship problem, let the symptoms talk to you first. And that will give you the clues as to what these thought clouds in your mind are all about. And then you work on one thought cloud at a time. That makes it digestible.
Yes.
Go for the biggest ones first, and it will snowball. After a while, once you start giving your brain the opportunity to work through some of the biggest nuts in your brain, then it'll start to sort of learn the process, and the other littler ones will start to evaporate.
So the brain is kind of rewiring through that, basically.
Yes, basically. Mm-hmm. So, but you might have difficulty in being able to identify exactly what those are. I try to give clues about, sort of think about it, capture it. Capture those little thoughts you have in the middle of a day where, you're driving down the road in a perfectly good mood, and suddenly you see a billboard or something on the side of the road and you suddenly go into a bad mood. Never happened to you? And you don't clock what actually happened, but something's triggered a memory just there. And one of these thought clouds lights up. Now, sometimes that happens in the middle of a conversation, or sometimes it happens when you're watching TV, and a thought cloud will light up, and suddenly you go into a different state. Emotions and thoughts and things are there. Now, if you're smart, you have to capture that and say, what's really going on? Most people go, oh, I'm in a bad mood. I think I'll have a drink, or let's go for a walk, or let's do something different, and I will let it go away. But it doesn't go away. It just goes down again. It becomes suppressed until it pops up.
Uh-huh. But I mean, that's actually, I find it fascinating, and it's so clear what you say. It's basically the things which are not working in our lives are actually the best indicators to show us, to teach us what we have to look at.
Yes.
So in a way, it's simple. In a way, we don't need to kind of do huge research or do kind of, 20 years of therapy and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, we can actually see, okay, this and this and this is challenging me. There is something which happens again and again. Yeah, and you just take this, look at it, hold it in your attention, and just go for it, right?
Yes. I'll tell you a funny story. When I first started doing this work, I was studying NLP. And I was particularly fond of one aspect of NLP called timeline therapy, which allows you to take a particular emotion or a particular problem back into the past, and you would discover what it was attached to in your past, childhood, or it could even be ancestral or even past life, whatever. And I go back into the past and I discover this old trauma, this old problem where I'd begun to believe a certain way. And it was so exciting to discover this journey going all the way back into the past. And I would have these major eurekas and major shifts. And it felt so good afterwards because I thought, oh, wow, I really feel the difference because that is no longer true now. And it would lighten my whole being. And after doing this for several years, it became harder and harder to still find those things to go back into the past. And they were smaller. The shift was smaller, and I didn't get such a big buzz. And I said, dang, those problems. I really wish I had more of them now so I could go back and find some more. And one of my teachers said there were at least 25,000 integrations or healings on the path to enlightenment, to full enlightenment. I said, oh, I must have lots more to do. It became harder to find. But I remember my favorite saying was that my work was about turning problems into gifts, because that's what they are. Yes. A problem is a gift. You know, if you can identify the source of the problem, it becomes a gift that you can transform into something positive.
And it's also a source of energy, right? I mean, even if it at the first view is kind of negative in inverted comma energies, but it's just energy. And if you turn it, if you use it for yourself, right, then it will be a gift.
And of course, relationships are the best way to find problems, aren't they? Because as soon as you get together with another human being, the friction between you will inevitably bring up all kinds of problems. So they're a real gift. Yes, I discovered this. And in fact, my inability to find my perfect partner was such a gift in that way that I was able to heal many, many generations of bad relationships in my family, and as well as healing the problems in my own mind, that I felt that the work I did for, at least 10, 15 years has allowed me to finally reach a place where my husband and I can have a really good relationship, where we can both work together through problems. It isn't that we don't have problems. Everybody has problems in relationships. But we have found ways that work and ways to heal very quickly so that they don't become insurmountable problems.
Wow.
It is work. It's turning those problems into gifts on a daily basis, forever.
Well, I don't know, Leonard. This I find a beautiful final statement. Your last sentence, right?
Yes, my almost last sentence. Okay. Because Arielle, you're the kind of person I would like to sit with at a bonfire and ask questions of wisdom. And I have a very small question for you to the end. What is a fulfilled and happy life for you?
What is what?
What is your definition of a happy and fulfilled life?
Oh, wow. Wow, happy and fulfilled life. I certainly feel I have that right now, which it probably blinds me to, when you don't have it, you probably think about it more. Happy and fulfilled life is full of love, full of, ideally, not being in pain so that you can enjoy being alive. But I think it doesn't even matter, because lots of people who are even about to pass can feel fulfilled even in those last moments. And I've been privileged to know people like that. And obviously it's more fun if you can be vibrant, if you can travel, if you can have, a wonderful relationship and children and all that stuff. But in fact, I think fulfillment for me is about sharing love. And sharing love is sharing healing, sharing conversations, inspiring people, just being, with others and sharing the love. For me, that's fulfilling.
Wow, thank you. Well, this was even stronger now than the first try for a final word. Well, thank you so much, Arielle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you.
Yes, and we will. I think we will come over, Leonard, right?
Yes, definitely, indeed.
Yeah. And maybe we can then record some more live podcasts with some, maybe more particular. We go into details with certain themes, I think, which would be very interesting for our listeners. We're in the starting process now, and the people we talk about very often have a very general. We ask for general things, but I already have 5 ideas for some other episodes, and we should do this live, right?
Well, We have a fire pit. I've already got the marshmallows.
Yes.
We will have that bonfire.
Yes.
Excellent.
From today onwards, I will write down questions for you. Watch out. Perfect.
Arielle, thank you so much. I hand over to Leonard for the final outro words.
Yes, basically, to all the listeners out there in the UK, in Germany, if you're keen to talk to Arielle in more detail, to read books about the work of Arielle, you can find all the information in our show notes. You find the website of Arielle's hotel, all the contact details in the show notes, and you find information about our social channels, about our website. And in case you're interested, or if you know people who have run the Bannister Meile, you're more than happy to contact us for further information, and maybe we can even host you on our podcast and spread the word to more people, to inspire people, to share love, to hear people. We've just heard about definition, and we're more than happy to have you on our podcast.
Excellent. Thank you. Danke. Good day, good evening, good night, whenever you hear this. And till the next time.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Thanks.
Bye bye.